Good evening. Welcome to the Zoning and Design Review Board meeting for Tuesday, April 10th. I will call the meeting to order and roll call.
Member Denton.
Here.
Member Allen.
Here.
Vice Chair Tigret. Here. Chair Cook.
Here.
Let the record show that Member Laz is absent.
Okay. And please rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda tonight? If not, somebody adopt the agenda?
I'll adopt the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And the approval of the minutes from March 13th. Did anybody see anything that needs to be changed on those? No?
I'll make
Okay, a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes. Public comment. I will open the public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Anybody? I didn't think so. All right. Then we will move on to our public hearing. 18-1634, the sign permit for Hotel Villaggio.
Thank you, Board. So this is a fairly straightforward item ahead of you. This is an application for a sign permit for a new monument sign at Hotel Villaggio. This is replacing the old monument sign that used to be in the fountain area. It was a two-sided monument sign that said Villaggio that was roughly 24 square feet on each side. It's proposed being replaced to a sign very similar to the one previously approved and currently installed at Vintage House. The one shown here is the one at Vintage House. It's white with a metal trellis effect with the text Vintage House as well as a Vintage Estate purple medallion. Next one is very, very different because it's gray and has a maroon medallion and it says Hotel Villaggio. It's sized about 75.5 inches or 6'3" in width and 44 inches or 3'8" in height. Which comes out to be 23 square feet in total. The pattern's composed of an aluminum sandwich between an aluminum square tube frame. The color of the frame is the same pattern as Vintage House, only this one is gray with a satin finish in order to match the proposed gray of the new lobby building that it will sit in front of, as shown there. Also shown here in this image is the sign that it's replacing, so it's in the approximate same location. The white text will stand out from the gray, and at night it will be softly lit, similar exactly as how the Vintage House sign is lit. So I wanted to identify that on page 2 and 3 of the staff report, if it is printed, seemed to have a weird printer issue. Something about italics confuses computers, so I just wanted to explain a little bit of what's going on there. The Yountville Municipal Code, Chapter 17, and the sign ordinance really contains the criteria that should be applied whenever evaluating a sign design. And they are as follows. First, the color for the sign backgrounds need to be selected from either an approved town color palette or from the palette used from other buildings on the same parcel. Like I said, the new lobby building is going to definitely reflect kind of this gray earth tone that you see here, as well as the other rooms. Second, the sign illumination should not cause glare or light intrusion onto any other signs or premises, and the lighting proposed here is supposed to be really subdued and not spread beyond the property line or really beyond the sign at all. And then lastly, eternally illuminated signs should have dark backgrounds with lighter letters. This isn't proposed to be one of those internally illuminated signs that you typically see in strip malls or anything like that. So regarding freestanding sign, the code also has some extra things to consider. that it should be consistent with the intent and provisions of the design ordinance, that the sign, together with all other signs on the premises, shouldn't exceed the total allowable square footage, and that the sign will not impair visibility around street corners. As we've stated before, staff is of the opinion that this is not only consistent with what the board already approved at Vintage House, but also consistent with the requirements of our design ordinance and our sign ordinance altogether. Because the total sign is less than 25 square feet, at 23 square feet, it meets all of the requirements that staff has seen. And so it's our recommendation that the ZDRB approve this monument design as presented. Included also are the standard set of conditions of approval that are applied to all construction projects. So we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for staff?
Are there any requirements within, I guess it would be the Yountville Municipal Code about setbacks for the signs from an actual sidewalk? I know it says it can't impose the right-of-way, but is there a certain distance that it has to be set back from the actual sidewalk?
For signs, it just can't impede in the right-of-way.
And for a certain height, if it's over, I believe, 10 feet, it has to be set back further, but this doesn't trigger that requirement.
Okay, and there were no comments about the Vintage House or anything with proximity to the sidewalk with that sign?
No.
Okay.
Oh, there's that one. Okay, Barbara, any questions?
No, I'm good.
The drawing there, the sign is very tall, and then in the Photoshop picture, it's low to the ground, like the Vintage House,
Right.
which is more correct.
So it is proposed in the sign that it would stand up about
30 inches,
38 inches
legs,
there. So it would stand up a little bit more
a lot higher
than the Vintage House.
than the picture
Yeah.
than that. Yeah.
So it looks like there would be this space here, whereas this is probably a little bit less than that, but there's
Wow.
also landscaping around it in order to subdue that a little bit. So that might be a good question for the applicant when they come in.
Do you have any questions?
No further questions.
Okay. Did the applicant want to make any statements about the sign?
Yeah. I'm Paige Martin, I'm a landscape architect. So when we installed the Vintage House, you can see that it was installed a little bit lower than what Hotel Bellagio sign is looking like. And we intend on doing the same over
Okay.
at Hotel Bellagio, just so that it's not kind of
Yeah.
hanging up in the air, but
Yeah.
it's grounded, and then there's planting that will be planted in front and behind that kind of moves underneath it. So
Okay.
it'll be a little lower.
Okay. That will look good. Okay, thank you. If there aren't any more comments from the applicant, then we can discuss it. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on it?
This one seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice addition with the Vintage House, and so I can easily translate that to the new property. So I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Mikhail?
Nope.
Barbara?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
Yeah, it's a nice distinctive sign that, since they're both the same, it makes sense. So would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the application with a condition that it's more similar to the height of Vintage House in its final position
In the footing.
in the vertical sense. So
Okay. In a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, there you go. The sign is approved. We will move on to 18-1642, also Hotel Bellagio.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you a modification to a previously approved design for Hotel Bellagio as it relates to the porte cochere and other entry elements. And this project was last before you in late 2016, and shown here on the screen is the approved design. And what you see is the porte cochere in the full 30-foot deep length, featuring the open ribs and the open air design, and it's anchored with the fireplace on the south side. And The revision before you tonight, or the proposed modifications, are a result of a City of Napa water line easement that was unknown at the time and which ran right through that portico share and through the outdoor patio on the south side. So the changes that you see are that the portico share is shortened about 23 feet. I believe it's about 7 feet, 8 inches, and it no longer features that open rib design, but is a more typical covered element supported by 2 posts. You also see the elimination of the fireplace and the stone perimeter wall that enclosed that outdoor patio. It was a 3-foot tall wall, and in its place you will see landscaping and here in this slide you see that because of the revised orientation of that entry to be maintained in the existing position, that both of those dormers will be retained on the bottom. Earlier, the proposal was to center the portico share and eliminate one of them. As part of value engineering and moving this project forward, they decided to keep that original entry element. And it does result in some slight window modifications on this elevation as well. Looking back to the outdoor patio area, we see that the 2-foot, 6-inch fire and water element will be moved off of the easement further east, and that results in that outdoor patio being pushed about 9 feet closer to the parking lot, aligned with the back edge of the curb. And also the trees that you see there will no longer be planted in ground, but in planters, so they can be moved if necessary. All these changes are in response to that easement and an effort to keep all improvements off the easement, which can't be moved. And here you can see all those improvements in plan view. The full portico share extending out to the edge of the parking lot. And here, the shortened element, but the same sort of entry pattern as you come off the sidewalk and through the parking lot. And the outdoor patio and the landscaping really maintains a lot of the same motif and design as before. So this project is reviewed in terms of design review, and design review is required for all exterior modifications, and the goal is to preserve and enhance the beauty of the man-made environment, to maintain and improve the qualities and relationships between buildings, and to protect and ensure the adequacy and usefulness of all development. We find that those standards and goals are met here, in that the revised design is really in keeping with the agrarian architecture of the building, even though it's slightly modified, and that really maintains the Yountville aesthetic in terms of overall site layout and landscaping, the whole picture here. We've noted that the increase in the size of the patio does not impact a use issue because the hotel's facilities are for use of hotel guests, and so we don't have an additional area that would trigger a parking standard. We also note that one of the parking spaces is eliminated due to the shifting of that portico share further south and the impacts it has on the parking lot. But here again, it does not impact the use because the vintage properties have an excess of 4 spaces, which are reduced to 3 as a result of this application. So we are turning this over to you for your discussion, and what we're looking for is a recommendation of approval that we can share with the town council. They will be hearing this at their meeting next week. We're really trying to sort of fast track this item before the decision makers so that they can continue with construction on site. And the applicant is here if you have any questions.
Okay, so this is just a recommendation to town council?
Yes.
Then? Okay. All right, anybody have any questions of staff?
Can you give us any more flavor or background on how the discovery of the easement and stuff was made? Or should we hear from the applicant?
I'll let the applicant
Okay,
address that.
thanks.
Yes.
Mikhail, Barbara, any questions?
Nope.
Of staff? Okay, then we can move along to the applicant.
Good evening, Steve Dano, General Manager of the Estate of Yountville. Yeah, I can address that. We actually were trying to get an agreement, an encroachment agreement, once we discovered that the water main ran through there. And we worked with the city of Napa diligently and couldn't come to an agreement. It's a bit complicated because it runs through the entire town, and it includes property from our property, the estate, Thomas Keller's property, and actually the County Yountville property. So we tried to coordinate this with the city of Napa, but it would take an inordinate amount of time to get this done. So the decision was made to shorten it and not encroach on the easement for now. And later on down the road, if this ever gets abandoned and the water main moves to the other side of Highway 29, that easement gets expunged, and we would really look at extending it. It's actually designed to be extended. So we're trying to get it finished and get it open. So we feel this is a great version that would also work well with the architecture and the town outfit.
Okay, anybody have any questions for the applicant? Any further questions?
Not at this time.
No. It's a shame because it was beautiful, the other one, and I'm sure you guys are disappointed too.
Yeah, we worked long and hard on this, and it just it involves so many people, and there's a financial commitment to it, and it's just going to take a little bit longer. But from what I'm hearing from the city of Napa, sooner than later, they want to move that pipe. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it again very soon.
And
That
it's
would be good.
your understanding, once that's moved, you'll be able to kind of tweak this design to go back to the original?
Yeah, we would go back to looking at that to potentially extend it at that point in time,
Okay.
whenever it does happen.
Was there any option explored to maybe have foundations outside of the easement and basically bolt something together so that?
We have the architect.
Yeah.
Bruce, do you want to comment? Sure. Because we did try that
Yeah.
as well.
That's something that you could just set.
No, I think the basis of my question is basically have any permanent structure outside, and so viewing the bridge across the easement as somehow a temporary structure that could be unbolted if they needed to gain access to that.
First of all, I'm Bruce Wright with SB Architects. And we're the architects who designed both schemes. And we looked at multiple options to accomplish the goal of spanning the easement. The issue really came down to not the technical design to span the easement, but the fact that the county of Napa would require demolition of the entire structure if you had to gain access to the water line. So if there was a failure in the line somewhere in the area of the Port Cochere as it was designed prior and approved, our client would have to demolish a certain portion of that to get access to make the repair. And if you imagine both the construction and the equipment and all that's necessary to actually span that space, there was concern about some further injury to the water line that was there. So the decision was made to create a design that allowed a future expansion, that once the water line was moved, we could use a much more cost-efficient foundation system. So in the meantime, we worked quite hard to capture as much of the design elements as we had before and then allow that future expansion to happen. So we were all quite disappointed to hear we had to make some of these moves, but in order to maintain the schedule of construction and pace, it just doesn't align with Napa's timeline to possibly move the water line.
Okay, anybody else have any questions
Nope.
for the applicants? Okay, thank you. Okay, what are your thoughts?
It's unfortunate the original design won't go through, and I hope in the future they are able to go back to that because I was a massive fan of that. But I appreciate their ability to pivot and work on getting this open sooner rather than later. I know it would be a benefit for the town and the client, so I'm all for it as presented.
Okay, Barbara?
Yes, I agree with Mikhail. The original design I was very in favor of. I like the open air element of it, but we have to deal with what we have to deal with for now. I like what you did.
Jared?
I have one further question for the applicant. So on the rendering, I see that the ridge line for the entry element meets the main body of the structure. In other words, the ridge heights of the new or the previous proposed entry met the ridge height. And on the elevations, it looks like the new element is lower than the existing ridge height, and it also looks like possibly the pitch of the roof. I may be reading into that too much, but was there any alterations with the pitch of the roof that's proposed?
Well, two things. The rendering and the elevations that you see, the elevation is actually correct based on the existing truss condition of the roof that exists at Bellagio. The rendering was slightly inaccurate in that the porte cochere in both schemes aligns with the ridge of the roof. So those two elevations are similar. It's essentially the same element shifted further to the south. The rendering was slightly, the view of it makes it appear that it aligns, but it's actually sort of a visual trick, I guess, that you're noticing. But I think as approved and as proposed, it's the similar elements, similar pitch, similar design intent. So I hope that answers your question.
Just one more follow-up. Was there any consideration to have the eaves of the new entry element maybe raised a little bit? Can you give me a scale factor as far as what is the top plate?
So the door that you're looking at is about 8 feet tall.
Okay.
And that essentially aligns with the existing windows that are in the building now. And I think so. The alignment of the eaves of the proposed porte cochere, the prior approved porte cochere, same alignment. It actually protrudes slightly from the existing eaves that are there, so it will have some protrusion, but it's as far as that we could get to the edge of that easement line. Because the easement runs at a diagonal, we have sort of a shorter, the shorter leg of the diagonal is sort of sets the point of how far we could push out the new porte cochere.
Thank you.
Okay. Has any decision been made as to what you will be doing with the public art program fee? If you'll be commissioning a piece of artwork or for your courtyard?
That decision is kind of under discussion at the moment. It has not been finalized.
Okay.
But we know, all in, if we look at the significance of the art fee, it's quite substantial.
Yeah.
And how to handle that is going to be an interesting one because, we've got 22 acres on the property, so it could also span the entire property.
True. Or you could have one spectacular piece of artwork.
That's true. But I think the right approach to that is to sit with the Art Council and figure it out together, frankly.
Okay, that'd be great. Sometimes things like that get left too late and out of the plan.
No,
so I
because
just
of the
wanted
sizable number, it has hit the radar a little bit, so we'll be circling back on that.
I'd love to see something on your property instead of the funds.
Yes. Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
So just a couple of other comments. I think I truly like the original concept as well, but that's understandable why there's a change that's needing to be made. I would, if we're looking at this, as a 5-10 year scenario, I think there may be an option to explore having that entry element more stately, maybe a different eave, raising the eave a little bit so that it has a little bit more presence. I really like the composition of the original concept with the single dormer, the fireplace, seemed to have a nice makeup. I'm not so sure about the two dormers. Is that an existing condition? The two dormers, if I recall correctly, is what if I drive by there, that's exactly what I'm seeing, right? So originally it was proposed to take off those two dormers and distill it down to the one. Can you speak to is it programmatically on the inside from the floor plan, why the windows on the right-hand side are now being kept versus...
Sure. I don't know if there's a possibility to go back to the plans. Let's start with what was approved prior. So the prior condition and the driver of shifting the porte cochere or the entry further south was that we were actually going to demolish one of the dormers, and if you'll notice that the arrival was directly on axes with the courtyard and the pool that was outside, and that was an existing condition that exists. It's not in alignment today, and our proposal was to shift that. In order to shift that, we had to demolish the office space that was back of house space in the attic upstairs, and that included one of the dormers, and I think that was actually Steve's office at one point in time. So we got him to buy into that. He moved to a different part of the property. Thank you. But when we ended up having to deal with the alignment of the easement, you'll notice that the easement is on this angle, and the further north we push the porte cochere, the more impact it had. Sure. So the decision was made for both the cost savings and sort of programmatic savings, is that when we had to realign this, we just shift it all back down, leave the two existing dormers, leave the existing windows as they are, because that is also back of house space and offices for the operations of the hotel. And by pushing it further south, we're able to extend that facade element out a little bit deeper to work better with the existing colonnade that surrounds the building. So there was a multi-layer answer to your question, but that was the logic.
What would you quantify that as? Do you think you're able to get maybe 6 or 10 inches of extra depth to the entry?
Yeah, we were fighting for 22 inches total to actually extend the element that was the larger porte cochere element to really give it more presence. So it turns out that the final alignment with that was slightly less. I think it's 6 to 10 inches, but every single inch sort of counted in that expression, because otherwise it would have been a recessive element with the colonnade, the existing colonnade that surrounds the building would have pushed out further, and it just seemed to be a sort of an awkward position. So we pushed it where it's slightly protruding. And we think that's better, and that will help down the road if there's a chance that we can add the larger porte cochere element back in as originally approved.
Tough situation, isn't it?
Painful, yeah.
Yeah, after you teased us with the first one.
I know.
It was
a heartbreaking sort of, of reality, but it was an issue that was discovered well after we had made the proposal to both the ZRDB and the town council, unfortunately.
Thank you. So I think just for my direction to the town council, I'm still in favor of the original location of the entry and the single dormer, just because of the composition and makeup. I absolutely understand every inch counts, but maybe there could be some other definition with raising the eaves of the entry to help make that more pronounced or something. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're all disappointed by the changes, but given the circumstances, I support what they've done. I think they've done everything they can to make it as nice as they can, and I encourage town council to approve it so that they can move on. So you don't need a motion or anything.
Let's have a motion, yes.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that it's recommended to town council with ZDRB approval.
And a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't even see the usual staff type recommendations
have
or anything. You're
nothing.
out. Okay, then I will move to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? A second, and all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Member Allen, second.
We are done.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Sure.